everyone, I'm Vicky, welcome to my channel. If you are new, please hit that subscribe button. If you are already part of my little family, thank you so much. So today's video is a recently read books video, although I haven't recently read some of these books. I started reading some of them in January, so I'm just basically going through the books that I've read so far in this year. So I'm going to start with the Lunar Chronicles, which is a series of books, so there's 4 of them, and the first one in that series is Cinder. So these are teen fiction books. They're sort of set in like a futuristic world, so you've still got Earth, you've got New Beijing, which is where Cinder is based, and they don't have cars, they have hovers, they've got androids, they've got net screens. So we are catching up to the time period that this is set in. With it being a series of books, I'm just going to try to quickly talk through the gist of what happens instead of going through one book at a time, because I will be here forever and I'll be rambling on. So the main character throughout all of these books is a young girl called Cinder. She's about 15, 16 years old, I could be wrong. Like I said, I did start reading this back in January. And she is a mechanic, that is her job role in New Beijing, but she's also a cyborg. So she's got a metal leg, a metal hand, she's got some wiring inside her brain, and because she is a cyborg, she's looked down upon. She's not full human, so she doesn't have the same rights as a human. She's got a guardian. She has to do whatever her guardian says. The money that she earns goes straight to her guardian. She's not allowed to run away. It's a bit like slavery in a sense. She doesn't get to live her own full life. So there is a plague that is going around and is just wiping people out. There's no cure, and Cinder sort of drags into the involvement of finding the cure, along with the Prince of Beijing called Kai. That's what he wants for his people. He wants to make their lives better. He doesn't want to see his civilians dying from this plague, but the only way for them to gather an antidote is by the Lunars. So the Lunars live on the moon, and they have their Queen Lavana, and she's not very popular. She is trying to make an alliance with Kai, but it is a marriage alliance because she wants to be Empress of Earth. So Cinder is trying to prevent that from happening, while that is the only option that Kai sees in helping to get the antidote to stop this plague from spreading. The Lunars have got their own set of powers, so they can glamour, they can change their appearance, they can make you see what they want you to see. They can put ideas in your mind, they can control your body. So yeah, they've got manipulation powers. So in the first book, it's about getting to know your main characters and those things coming together and learning about Queen Lavana and the Lunars. And then the second one within the series is Scarlet. So Scarlet is obviously based on Little Red Riding Hood. Scarlet always wears a red hoodie that her grandma bought her. So she lives on a farm. There is a wolf involved. The wolves have come from Luna, so they're not from Earth. They have been genetically made. They were originally just men, but then they've messed about with the genetics to make them more wolf-like. So they have sharp fangs, they've got claws, and then their behaviour is really aggressive. They're very brutal, very masculine, very muscly and strong, and so Scarlet becomes involved with a wolf. From reading some other books, like wolves become imprinted on certain people, so the wolf that she's come across that has happened with them, like he's like imprinted on Scarlet, so his genetics now are not taking over, his instincts are not taking over because the way he feels about Scarlet is much stronger than that. The wolves have been placed on Earth by the Lunars to cause mayhem, to persuade Earth to go more with the alliance that Queen Lavarna wants. So she's been thinking of this plan for such a long time, and now she's executing it. So that is how you get the introduction of Scarlet. Scarlet the wolf end up coming together with Cinder, and they are forming a group now to go against the Lunar Queen Lavarna. So the third book in the series is Cress. So Cress is a young girl who has been placed on a satellite. She's been there since she was really little, and now she's like 15. And her hair has just grown and grown and grown. She is a shell, so she's originally from Luna, but she is a shell, so she can't manipulate anyone and she can't be manipulated. And for that reason they're seen as a danger on Luna, so they usually try to kill them. But because Cress has got an amazing skill with computers and software and hacking them and creating like ways to spy on Earth and stuff, she's been saved, but she's been placed on a satellite that's orbiting Earth, so she's not allowed to live on Luna. And through her ability to use all this electronic equipment, she ends up coming into contact with Cinder and her gang of people who are wanting to revolt against the Lunar Queen, and then Cress ends up helping them, but they then have to help Cress get off the satellite. So Cress becomes a really important part of the gang to bring down the Lunar Queen Lavarna. Then the fourth and final book in the series is Winter. So Winter is obviously Snow White, and she is the stepdaughter of Queen Lavarna. So Queen Lavarna was originally married, and her first husband left behind a daughter who Lavarna has been kind enough to allow to live in the palace. However, Winter is really beautiful and she refuses to use her glamour. She doesn't like to manipulate people, so obviously this causes Queen Lavarna quite a lot of jealousy because she wants to be the most beautiful queen ever, yet you've got someone underneath you who is beautiful already without using a glamour. Within this storyline of Winter, you learn that a Lunar who has got the gift and refuses to use it, they can go a little bit crazy and a little bit cuckoo because they're not using the powers that they were gifted, but because she's got no other outlet to let them out with, she's just making herself a bit mad. So sometimes she will see visions that aren't real and she'll have panic attacks and things, and that's just a side effect of not using your lunar power. So obviously within this storyline, there is a big war going on. Like Cinder has managed to gather like a good army to go against the Lunar Queen Lavarna. There's still the plague, like people are still dying from it. It is now mutating and getting worse. It's becoming more rapid in its effects, and they're just trying to find the best way to outsmart Lavarna and stay alive. When I did get to the end of this storyline, I was really sad. I could have read more. If there'd been another book, I would have read more. They're just so good. There's so much that happens. Like, look at the size of this book, and I didn't want it to end. I did not want it to end. There's just so much that happens, and I'm just so invested in this storyline. So when I did finish, I was really upset that I couldn't read anymore. It was, yeah, they are so good. So because I was so upset that the Lunar Chronicles came to an end, I had a good Google search and found out that there's Lavarna's story. So obviously I've picked this up and I've read it. It's called Fairest, and it just tells the story from Lavana's point of view, but this is going from her childhood, and this story happens before the Lunar Chronicles, and it's not as good as the Lunar Chronicles, but I did still enjoy it. It was nice to pick up something that is in relation to the series that I just finished. But yeah, they're going to remain on my bookshelf, and I will go through them again at some point, because I just can't get enough of that storyline. It's just so fast paced. I really do love it. Moving on to 2 books that I took away with me on my honeymoon to read. The first is Me Before You by Jojo Moyes, if I've said that right, and then the second is After You by Jojo Moyes. So if you don't know and haven't heard anything about this story, it is about a young girl called Lou who goes to work as the carer for a young guy who is stuck in a wheelchair. He cannot move any part of his body and he needs assistance with eating, washing, drinking, you name it. He will do as much as he can for himself, but it is very limited, and he just wants his life to end. This is not the life he signed up for. Before his accident, he was a fit and healthy and active young man, and so dealing with being sat in a chair all day and needing constant help from others to do anything is just, it's not living for him. So he sets a date that he's going to go and euthanize himself. Lou overhears this conversation, so then she sets herself the task of trying to change his mind. So she arranges days out, she arranges activities for him to do, stuff that is adventurous and exciting, and to show him that although his body can't do what it used to do, like he can still live a good life and have adventures and experiences. And throughout this, they end up falling in love with one another, which is really sweet, but in the end he does still stick to his guns and wants to end his own life. I did get a little bit bored, like, within the middle of this book. I think it's quite like, I was quite involved and enjoying it when you still had the chase of it, but then I think as you sort of realise that it wasn't, I don't know, it wasn't going to change his mind. I just kind of lost interest. It didn't really grip me, and I think because it's been made into a film and I've heard other people rave about it, I had really high hopes. So although I took this on holiday with me, I made sure I read it, but I did struggle to get through it. It just didn't excite me enough. But because I'd read the first one, I thought, right, I'm going to read the second one, which is After You. It took me a bit to get into it because Lou is in like a bit of a depressive sort of mood to begin with, but it is quite nice how she does come out of that. It's like, because this book's a lot about her dealing with the fact that someone has passed away, but it's been their choice to pass away. It's kind of a different grieving process to the normal death that someone would take, because he set aside a date that he was going to die. It's not something, it's not an everyday thing, is it? So this book was about how she was dealing with that grief and that loss, and then her trying to find herself and her trying to get a grip on her own life and live her life how she wanted to. So I found it a little bit easier to read this one. But these books were not, I don't know, I think I'm never really in love with a book where there's been a lot of hype over it and then I've come to read it. Like, I've always had really high expectations and they've never met that. So if if there wasn't the hype over them and they'd not been made into the film, maybe I would have enjoyed them more. I don't know. So yeah, I gave it a go because I took them on holiday with me and I had nothing else to read, so I was forced to finish them. Then when we got back, I started reading Leslie Pierce, Survivor. So this is the second time that I've read this book. It is a part of a it's a 3-part series. So I'm not sure which order it goes in, but there's The Promise and there's Belle. So I think this is the last book in the series. I could be wrong, so please don't quote me on it. But I just really love books by Leslie Pierce. Like, I need to get more books written by her because I really do love the stories that she comes up with. So this one it's set in like wartime, so it begins in 1938, and it's a young woman called Marie. So she's kind of coming off the rails because she lives in a really small part of New Zealand, and there's not too much for someone of her age to do. So her parents feel like it would be a good way for her to grow up and to learn responsibility and such things if they sent her to London to live with a cousin, which is what they do. But they obviously didn't realise that war was going to break out. And so while she's over in London, war does break out and she really has to grow up quickly. She has to become less selfish and more caring and think about others before herself. So she's living with her uncle, but unfortunately they get killed in an air raid. Then she has to go and live in the East End. She's having to work. Then her home in the East End gets bombed, so she ends up moving again to the countryside, and at some point she gets called by like MI5 kind of people to become a spy and to help smuggle people out of France. So it's a really good story of how like this young woman who was really selfish and just thought that everything should be given to her on a plate kind of goes through a lot of things, and it makes her a better person for it. And then even herself throughout this in the story, she refers to herself as how if she hadn't experienced these massive amounts of loss and corruption to her life, like she doesn't feel as if she would have changed. She needed those experiences to become the person that she becomes. And eventually the war does end and she does manage to move back home, and she appreciates the family that she's got so much better from the time that they've been apart. So I did really enjoy this book. I have now bought the other 2 books, so I will be able to read them. So I'll save this so that I can read all 3 of them, and then I think after that I will be donating this one to the charity shop because I do sort of remember bits of a book, so after a couple of times I want something new, but because this is a 3-parter, that's the reason I'm going to save it. The other book that I read by Leslie Pierce is Stolen. So this one took me by surprise a little bit, to be honest. So the books that I've read by Leslie Pierce previously have always been set in like a period drama setting, like 1800s, or like that one was set in or the one before it was set in like 1938. Whereas this one is set in modern time, and I wasn't expecting that because I didn't realise that she did write in modern time. I thought everything was set in the past. So this one did feel like a bit of a breath of fresh air when I started reading it. It's about a young girl who gets found washed up on a beach. She's in a really old-fashioned blue dress. She's got no hair, they've shaved her hair, she looks stick thin. She's near death. And then they're trying to work out who she is. She's got amnesia, she can't remember anything. And they put her picture on the front of newspapers. So some people who used to work with her think that it could be Lottie. So they go and inform the police of who they think it is. They go and speak to her parents. Just to make sure like if they have seen her, then they're not gonna give the police a false lead. It turns out that the parents haven't seen her for a number of years, and her friends thought that, because they used to work on a cruise ship, her friends thought that as soon as she left that style of work that she was going home to her parents, but she never did. So then they just try to piece together the mystery of what has happened to this young girl. At the same time, Lottie is trying to regain her memory so that she can say what has happened to her. I was gripped. I was really gripped with this. Like, I kind of love this sort of thing. So she wasn't abducted to begin with. She wasn't stolen. She willingly went with this couple who were like preachers and talking about the Bible and things like that. So she thought she was in safe hands, but it was a trap from the beginning. So they sort of took Lottie under their wing. Got her into a place where she thought that she was working for them. Then they slowly started to take away certain things from her. So they took away her mobile, they took away her passport, they took money from her, and then they eventually took her freedom. They would lock her in a basement room and not let her out of this house. It got to the point where they were so delusional that they said that she was going to provide them with a child, that she'd willingly accept this. So they forced her into a pregnancy that she didn't want. Again, she was still locked in this room this entire time, and the only reason that Lottie was found along the beach is because she had managed to escape. Lottie does eventually get her memory back, and then she runs through the events of everything that's happened to her. Some of it is quite graphic, but I was just so invested in this book. Like, I just didn't. It was another one that I didn't want to end, but I was just like, when can I pick it up? When can I read it? I was like that, and it kind of ended like on a good note. But I was really worried. There was part of this book where I was really, really worried about Lottie and what was going to happen to her. But I don't want to give it all away. Like, I really did enjoy this book, and I hope that you will. Oh, I feel like I'm really rambling. I'm really sorry. I'm out of practice. So the next book is Memoirs of a Geisha. This has been sitting on my shelf for a very long time, and I've just not really felt like picking it up and giving it a read. It's really, really tiny writing, but I did. I was like, do you know what? Let's have a go at this. And I was really surprised with how much I enjoyed it. If you haven't seen the film, I will try to explain what happens in this. So obviously it is the memoirs of a geisha. It goes through her childhood, the fact that she was kidnapped and forced into becoming a geisha, and the discipline and strictness involved in becoming a geisha, the arts and how you've got to perform, the way you've got to think, the way you've got to present your facial expressions and walk, and just everything was in this book. How much money men pay for geishas. Obviously the story within this isn't true. It's the story of the girl in this book isn't true, but a lot of the training, a lot of the instruments they use, a lot of the dance and things is real. That is what a geisha has to do. And I can't help but have the stigma that it's just a really expensive female escort. But there's a lot of traditions associated with the geisha. But this storyline, like I say, it did impress me. I did find it far more interesting than I thought I would do. I have watched the film before, but many years ago, and throughout reading this, it made me want to watch the film again. I haven't got the film, and I haven't gone out and watched it yet. And so that's why it's not in a book versus film video, it's just in what I have read. But yeah, it was really good. Like I say, I'm pleased I picked it up. It has been on my shelf for a while, I've been avoiding it. I have. It's been there and I've just been like, nah, not today. So it wore like a breath of fresh air when I did pick it up because it was just so different to what I had been reading before. So yeah, I'm pleased that I had something to break up the genre of what I had been reading. But yeah, it was interesting, and there were parts of it where it was a bit dull and a bit boring, but for the majority of the time it did interest me. So the most recent book that I have read and only just finished is Desperate Measures by Kitty Neal. This is another one where I looked at it on my bookshelf and thought, I don't know if I'm going to be into this, but the writing isn't small, it's quite big. So it didn't take me long to finish this book and I was really invested in it. So yeah, I just wanted to read it all the time. So it's about a group of ladies and it reminds me of a book that I read before about some secret shoppers. So it's a group of ladies, 4 of them, who get together and they want to seek revenge on the men who have hurt them or done something to affect their lives in a negative way. So they want their revenge and they want to get back at them. So they form their little group, their little clan. The head of the group is a lady called Val. So she used to work in marketing and she was dating this other guy from marketing, and she had an idea. She relayed this with him and then he went behind her back, presented the idea first before she got a chance to, and then she ended up losing her job. So she wanted revenge on this guy because she couldn't get another job and she was the one who was coming up with the plans on what they were going to do to get back at the men. One of the ladies involved in the group was a young girl called Paula, and she had been raped. When she came to give her statement, the police did not think that there was enough evidence, they didn't believe her, so they didn't look into it. So these group of ladies get together and they fake a rape, which is really mean, but they were like, well, he did actually rape Paula and didn't get sentenced for it, so in a way he's getting his just desserts. And as it turns out, it was a very nasty man and he had been going around forcing himself on multiple women and he had yet to be caught for his acts. So it was actually quite a heroic thing that they did. It was wrong, but in a way it was heroic. One of the other ladies had been swindled out of a lot of money, so called Cheryl. She had a painting that was her grandmother's. A dealer had seen it and only gave her £20 for it when it was worth £2,000. So they got their own back by selling him a copy and not an original. And then one of the other ladies called Betty had gone through a messy divorce. But this plan kind of backfired on the women and blew up in their face. So they just wanted to cause a bit of disruption to her ex-husband's life. They just wanted him to feel a little bit of misery for a change. So they tried to pretend that he had been unfaithful to his now new wife. But it didn't go to plan and they got caught out. Unfortunately, the new wife was pregnant, and due to the shock of the situation, her blood pressure skyrocketed and she ended up getting rushed into hospital. So it turned out that she ended up losing the baby, which it had nothing to do with the blood pressure, but they didn't disclose that information to the group of women, so they felt so guilty in what they had caused that they never actually went through to resolving Val's revenge on getting back at that work colleague. But the ladies just formed such a good friendship that they ended up moving to work and live with one another. In the end, it is quite a happy ending and everything is resolved. But it was just quite nice. Like I enjoyed like the sneakiness of it. Like the how they were going to map out their plans and was it going to come off, and yeah, so it was quite a nice story. I did think it ended like quite abruptly. It just yeah, I was expecting more, but it just suddenly just went to the end. Like I've come to the end of the book. But yeah, it did have me invested straight away. I was hooked straight away, so I did enjoy that. I have got some other Kitty Neal books on my bookshelf, so I am looking forward to reading them now. I am due to start a new book, but I just can't face it. Like I've got this assumption that it's going to be really difficult for me to get myself stuck into, so I haven't started it yet. Which brings me on to books that I have struggled to complete. So I did start reading The Boy That Never Was by Karen Perry. So this is a story about a little boy that goes missing. The family used to live in Tangier and there was an earthquake. The mum was out, she was working, the dad had to nip out to get some things that he'd left at a friend's house, so he left his little boy in the house asleep, but while he was nipping to a friend's house there was an earthquake, and when he came back, like obviously his house was in disrepair and they didn't find a body. So it then shifts and they're now in Ireland and he thinks that he sees his little boy in the street, and I should have felt like gripped and wanting to read more after that point, but it was just too slow. There wasn't really anything happening, and the dad character in this book, I just didn't like him. I wasn't feeling him. So yeah, I tried, and then I was just like, do you know what? I don't want to force myself to read this. I'm not enjoying it. So I was just like, let's just quit. So that is one that I haven't completed. I didn't read it. I didn't read it all. It just wasn't for me. It wasn't gripping enough. So I feel like I've waffled on quite a lot. I hope I've tried to describe the stories and the books that I've read as best as I can. So I hope you have enjoyed this video. If you watched it till the end, thank you very much. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. Hopefully see you again soon. But for now, goodbye.